I am sharing every single thing I do to save me money on groceries. These are the things I do all the time, sometimes, and just occasionally when I just really need to cut my grocery budget even lower for whatever reason. Not only am I sharing all of these tips, but in the description you can find the link for a free printable that goes along with this video that has all the tips there. And then be sure to stick around to the end of the video though, make sure you watch all the way through, because at the end I am sharing which 5 tips I believe are the most impactful, but also the most realistic. So those are the 5 you're definitely going to want to implement in your own life. So I have got a piece of paper with my list, I have some water, and like I said, this is definitely going to be a longer video. However, throughout the video, I am going to link a few other videos that go a little bit deeper on each of these individual tips. So be sure to go check those out after watching this video. And then I've also got lots of good ones coming up. But let's dive into what all of my tips are. So there are 3 main categories for the ways I save money on groceries. They're probably going to be pretty obvious, but, well, the first 2. The last one might not be so obvious. But the first one is to buy cheaper ingredients. The second category is to buy fewer ingredients. And then the third category is to actually use up what you buy. So to actually stick to meal plans, stick to what you bought for dinner, planned for dinner, actually use up the things you spent money on rather than going and spending more money, right? So let's dive into it. I'm probably gonna have to hold this piece of paper the whole time because yeah, there's a lot to share. So first, I wanna talk about meat and buying meat. That's a major expense for anybody, right? So what I do, I only use a few different types of meat. We use chicken, obviously. That's the cheapest one that everybody knows, right? Chicken, ground beef, bacon, seafood. I usually do frozen seafood just because it's simpler, but salmon and shrimp and canned tuna are our go-tos. And I know like a lot of people hate canned tuna, but I promise it can be really yummy. Leave me a comment if you want some of my recipe recommendations for canned tuna. But sticking to those cheaper cuts of meats definitely keeps my grocery budget low. And then the second tip within that is to stock up when they're on sale. So this way, so what I do to stock up on meat is I pre-prep it. Well, at least I pre-prep chicken. So I will buy bulk chicken breast when it's on sale and chop it and then freeze it. And that definitely saves me time and money. I buy it on sale, so that saves me money. And then having that chicken pre-chopped, I'm gonna circle back to that in a second with another tip, but definitely prepping that and having that all in my freezer helps save me money. Ground beef, I'll buy in bulk and freeze it in individual 1-pound portions, things like that. Sometimes there are different, more unique cuts of meat on sale, and I'll buy those and give those a try. But for the most part, I stick to the basic, simple, cheaper meats. And if you do that, you can even buy like higher quality ones. And using the same meats over and over does not mean that you have to use the same recipes over and over. It's very simple to go into Pinterest, to go into Google, or to head to your local library. That's one of my big tips for finding new recipes. Go to your local library, check out recipe books. If you have some recipes in there that you really like, that you like the sound of, that you try while you have the book checked out, scan them, take a picture of them, just keep the recipes from the book you like, and return the book. I like to do that because then I don't have to store the cookbook. And I often find that most cookbooks have like a lot of recipes I don't really care for, or I don't ever plan on trying because they don't fit these rules, right? So I return the cookbook and I keep pictures or scanned copies of my favorite recipes. That's definitely an easy way to find new recipes, to not get bored of having the same cuts of meat over and over again. I have a ton of ways to cook chicken breasts that are not boring, a ton of ways to cook ground beef that are not boring. You don't have to eat the same dinners over and over again to use the same cheap cuts of meat. Segueing into the next tip, have less meat. Have more meatless meals in your meal plans. Just eat more meatless meals each week. And that's definitely going to save you money because you're not going to be buying any sort of expensive cut of meat. And then again, go back to that tip of how to find new, unique ways to eat meatless meals. Go into Pinterest, there you're gonna find a ton of meatless meal ideas, right? And I'm gonna have an upcoming video with a roundup of my favorite meatless meals, things like that. So be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for that. And then once you have tried out a bunch of different meals with these cheap cuts of meat, different meatless meals, things like that, create a go-to dinners list. That is one of my biggest tips for not being tired of eating dinner at home, but also not tiring of the whole process of choosing what's for dinner, actually cooking it, grocery shopping, all of that. If you start your meal plan, start the whole dinner decision process with a list of go-to dinners is going to simplify the whole thing. So I suggest starting with at least 10 to 20. Mine is probably actually like 50 different recipes. I'm telling you, we don't eat the same things over and over. This doesn't have to be boring, but create your go-to dinners list and have that ready to go where you can eat these same cheap things over and over without actually eating them over and over. I'll link a video here of an in-depth video about how to create your go-to dinners list. In those go-to dinners, make sure you are not including things. If you're trying to save a lot of money on groceries, make sure you do not include any recipes with what I call unique ingredients. So those are the ingredients that you go buy like a whole container of and you use for one recipe, or they're very like specialized ingredients and you're going to use it in one thing. If you do that, you need to eat that recipe multiple times. That one you do need to repeat a lot because you're wasting your money if you don't use up that ingredient. We'll get more into that in category 2 of how to buy fewer ingredients. That is, you're wasting your money if you don't use an ingredient you buy, right? So if you are cooking a recipe that calls for like a tablespoon of something and it comes in a big container, that's a waste. So either skip those recipes entirely, plan to cook that recipe a bunch of times, or what I do, the next tip is I call these paired recipes, and this again falls under the second category of buying less, but I'm gonna go ahead and talk about it. So paired recipes are 2 recipes or more that use the same, more unique ingredient. And whenever I plan one recipe, I also meal plan the second recipe to make sure I'm using up that ingredient and not letting it go to waste. And again, buying less, which is category 2. But if you do not want to skip that recipe with that unique ingredient, try to find another way to use it. And again, use Pinterest, Google, all those things to try to find other ways to use that ingredient. Or you can simply swap it or skip it. So if there is a recipe that calls for like orzo or something and I can use rice that I already have in place of it, I'll do that. Or I'll simply leave it out, especially if it's like a topping, something you sprinkle on top, and I'm gonna have to buy a large container of it. I'm not gonna buy that, I'm just gonna leave it out of the recipe. Anything like that, if it can be skipped, if it's not a major part of the recipe, I'll just skip it. What I don't skip, however, and my next tip, is to focus on big impact, cheap ingredients. So what I mean by that is the cheap ingredients that have big flavor. So this is things like herbs, spices, even things like mustard. Dijon mustard is a very big flavor that I use in a bunch of different recipes that I use in a bunch of different recipes. It is a big flavor, pretty reasonably priced ingredient that I use multiple different ways. Again, I have paired recipes that I use Dijon in. If I buy a bottle of Dijon, I use it a couple of different ways, and it has a big flavor where I don't need a whole lot of other ingredients with it. So things like lemon, cilantro, hot sauces, spices like chili powder, cumin, things like that. All of those are going to have big flavor impact for not a lot of money. Next, if you are able to skip the pre-made, pre-prepped convenience ingredients, that's going to save you a lot of money. So these are things like chopped onions, pre-mixed taco seasoning. Like, you don't need to do that. You can put cumin, not chipotle powder. You could do chipotle powder, chili powder, salt, pepper, onion, garlic powder, all of those things you can mix up yourself. You don't need to buy pre-made taco seasoning. You don't need to buy pre-prepared vegetables. You don't need to buy pre-made sauces, things like that. DIY what you can. So it's kind of the next tip also. DIY what you can. And so one caveat with this, I do buy some pre-made things. If it calls for a unique ingredient to DIY the sauce, I'm probably going to buy the bottle, and we'll just have that on a really busy night, something like that. I utilize shortcut ingredients sometimes. So if I have a really busy week, or one of my later tips will be about backup meals, I'll use pre-made things like that for backup meals. But I try to skip pre-made, pre-prepped, pre-chopped, whatever convenience ingredients overall. If I have a recipe one week, like I meal plan for 2 weeks at a time. If I plan a recipe using a convenience ingredient, something more expensive, I try not to plan any other meals that week using things like that are going to cost me more money. So utilize it sparingly or not at all. But the next tip along with that is, DIY what you can. See what makes simple DIYs. I recently discovered that DIYing lunch meat is super easy. I will buy a frozen turkey breast, and you cook it from frozen, and it comes pre-seasoned. I actually add some extra seasoning. I do like blackened seasoning on it to make like Cajun turkey lunch meat. But you throw it in the oven and it just cooks, and then you take it out and slice it up. It's so simple. It's better for you and it's cheaper. That is a really easy DIY. Sometimes things are not easy DIYs and I will buy it. But find the things that are going to make an impact on your grocery budget that you don't have to spend a lot of time and energy making. Along the lines of DIYing what you can, try to find what you can prep ahead of time that is going to save you time and money getting dinner on the table on those busy evenings. So like I mentioned previously, I chop chicken breast, and simply the act of having pre-chopped chicken breast like saves me so much mental energy. Like when I know that part of dinner is already done, I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Like I just have to season the chicken and cook it real quick in the skillet. Dinner's practically done. And again, one of my later tips will be about making simple side dishes and having like go-to simple side dishes. So I will throw chicken in the skillet and cook it up real quick, the pre-chopped chicken, have my simple sides, and dinner comes together really quickly. But I take that a step further. I will pre-chop veggies, something like onions, bell peppers, things I can throw in the freezer, things that last a long time. I will pre-prep those. I will pre-prep sauces sometimes. I have a whole system. I call it the mini prep method. I don't do meal preps. I don't prep entire meals, but I will prep components of meals. And that seriously saved me so much time, money, effort, mental energy, all of those things. It's a big deal. And I've said this in other videos. I'm still working on it. I'm going to sell a pre-made meal plan, a whole explanation training of my mini prep method soon as I finish it. But that's the gist of it, is you prep components of meals and you have it ready to go for those busy evenings. All right, it is now raining and a bit dark outside. So I hope the lighting and sound quality is okay for the rest of this video, but we will see how this goes. All right, next tip is a really big one, and spoiler alert, this is one of my top 5 that I'm going to talk about at the end, but skip buying what I call empty snacks. So that is unfortunately kind of a phrase I stole from like the dieting industry, and I don't really like that industry, but empty calories is what I'm referring to, right? So when you buy chips, candy, treats like that, you are paying a lot of money for not like filling your stomach with, like not squashing hunger. Especially if you have kids. They're gonna eat a bag of chips and be like, Mom, I'm hungry. And you're like, you just ate like $5 worth of food. Doesn't matter, those are empty snacks. So I don't spend money on them. We'll buy a couple of treats every once in a while. I love me some hot Cheetos. I am not full after eating hot Cheetos. I may feel bad, I may be sick to my stomach, but I'm not full. I'm gonna want a snack again pretty quickly, or a whole meal. You know, like it's not filling, and what you get for your money is not very much. Like I just said, you're gonna buy a whole bag of chips, it's like $5, and whoever eats it is gonna be hungry pretty quickly afterwards. So I completely skip buying those empty snacks, except for maybe 1 or 2 treats per grocery trip, and I meal plan and grocery shop for 2 weeks at a time. So that's pretty minimal, right? Especially compared to a lot of families. I skip a lot of the junk, and that saves us a lot of money. So some of my favorite filling snacks that are easy to grab, chips and salsa, chips and guacamole. We make naan pizza, so that's more like almost a meal or a snack, depending on, you know, if you're like a teenage boy or not. But I buy naan at Aldi, and we throw pizza sauce and mozzarella cheese on there and throw it in the toaster, and you got a mini pizza, and it's delicious. Those are actually really good. Like we do sometimes eat those as a dinner, but they are super filling, super tasty. What are my other ideas? Oh yeah, hummus. Hummus is one of my favorite snacks. I don't know how I just blanked on that. Hummus with crackers, hummus with tortilla chips, hummus with veggies, hummus with naan, anything. I've even made my daughter hummus toast. Like I just make a piece of toast and throw some hummus on it to try to fill her up more. And she's a toddler and she doesn't know that might be kind of weird, but it's delicious. And hummus is filling and has protein. Yeah, let's see. Hummus, naan pizza, chips and salsa, guac, crackers and cheese. Like that might be toddler food, but it's filling and tasty, you know? And don't buy those little snack packs at the grocery store. Buy yourself a large pack of cheese sticks or pre-sliced cheese if you really don't want to slice it yourself, and make your own snack pack. Like make your own Lunchable, or you know, those little like grab and go like nuts and things. Nuts are another one that's a filling, tasty snack. And if you buy a large container of nuts and your own, like a large package of dried fruit or chocolate chips or M&Ms, and you make your own little snack bag, you're gonna get a lot more for the money. This is one of the easy DIY things, fine, but you can easily DIY you're gonna get a lot more for the money than buying those prepackaged ones that come with like this much food. And my last filling easy snack is Greek yogurt ranch dip. So literally buy a package. So I do buy this package because ranch mix calls for powdered buttermilk. Yeah, I'm gonna buy the pre-made ranch mix, but I'm gonna get the mix, the powder, and mix it into plain Greek yogurt and make a really protein heavy filling dip for, again, whatever you want. I will even sometimes dip flatbread non-pizzas into this ranch dip and really get a good hearty filling of protein. Serving of protein. And the snack tip segues me into tip, or category rather, number 2, which is buy less. And again, buying cheaper ingredients and buying less ingredients are tips. Like obviously that's gonna make you spend less money. But these are the specific ways of how to buy less. So not only should you not buy empty snacks, but you should limit the amount of snacks per week. So this doesn't mean you have to eat the same things every week. But say you go to a grocery store on Saturday, Sunday, whatever, or you pick up your grocery order. Decide on 2, 3, or even 1, depending on your family, hearty snack that you're gonna have that week. So maybe you do buy some pre-made guacamole, maybe you DIY some guac, whatever. Again, that's gonna be cheaper. But that is the go-to snack for the week. Next weekend, you buy something new. But apply the same idea to breakfast, lunch, and treats. Like I said, we limit our treats, but I will, the wind is blowing, something just blew by the window. We do limit our treats and things, but I do like choose 1 per week. So I might make something, or I might buy something, especially like the seasonal treats that start coming out this time of year. So hard to skip. You don't necessarily have to entirely skip them, but don't count them as food. They are a treat. But anyway, we also limit our breakfast options each week, our lunch options each week. When you buy less, you save more money. So 1 week we may have breakfast sandwiches, 1 week we may make a breakfast casserole, 1 week we may just have like scrambled eggs and turkey bacon, something like that. But we rotate through these, so eating it for 7 days doesn't get too boring. The next week we have the same thing for 7 days, but we don't have that same thing for another 7 days for a while. You know what I'm saying? And then yeah, only a couple of lunch options, couple of snack options per week, so we were buying less and not just having things in your refrigerator or pantry or whatever that are just sitting there. You spent money on them and they're not being utilized. The number 1 way to buy less groceries, buy fewer groceries, don't come at me, grammar people, to buy fewer groceries is to shop your kitchen first. So before you make a meal plan, and if you are anti-meal plan, I'm gonna get to you in a minute. We're gonna talk about that in a minute. You're not anti-meal plan, you are anti like super structured specific meal plan. And we're gonna talk about in a second why that's okay. You can still save money and you can still meal plan, like meal planning. Anywho, before you make your meal plan, your grocery list, before you place your grocery order, whatever you're doing, shop your kitchen first. Decide what you're gonna have for dinner based on what you already purchased and spent money on. Again, I have videos deep diving, and I'm calling this video a deep dive, but I have videos deep diving into each of these tips in this deep dive where I go into specifics on how many times can I point above my head. So check out this video later. After watching this video, check out that video where I talk about how to shop your kitchen to save the most money, the right ways to shop your kitchen. But essentially, you're gonna look at everything you have already purchased, whether that is a meat, a vegetable, a sauce, like I was talking about Dijon. If you already have Dijon in your kitchen, put something that makes like a Dijon sauce on your recipe. What? Put a recipe that calls for Dijon, makes a Dijon sauce or something like that onto your meal plan, whatever I'm trying to say. Shopping your kitchen first is the number 1 way to buy fewer groceries. And part of that is my paired recipe tip from earlier. So a specific example of that is I have a recipe. You've probably heard of it. It's a common one. I've seen it a million times on Pinterest. It's a crock pot recipe for Catalina chicken. And most of those recipes call for a pack of onion soup mix, which Aldi sells in a 2-pack. So I always have a second pack of onion soup mix, a second package, little envelope of onion soup mix. I have a second recipe that's really not healthy, but really tasty, where you bread chicken and onion soup mix. And wow, saying it out loud, I'm like, that sounds super unhealthy. But hey, we limit those treats and snacks, so you know, #balance. But I will put both of those recipes on my meal plan, or if I don't, I will plan to have the Catalina chicken again shortly. And then we won't have it for a while if we have it 2 times in like a month, right? But shopping my kitchen first, having those paired recipes where I say, hey, I have this meal plan, or meal on my meal plan. It calls for this ingredient. I know I don't use the whole container of it in one sitting in one recipe, I know I can use it in this recipe also, so I'm also going to meal plan that recipe. That saves me money by making me buy fewer things. You will also buy fewer things if you limit your trips to the grocery store. So like I said, I try to grocery shop every other week. And I try really hard not to go in between, which of course sometimes we do. We run out of things, we need more fresh ingredients. The toddler decides she's gonna eat 100 of one thing in 1 week and we run out of it in 2 days and then she wants more. Kids. But I'll do like a small pickup order at Walmart, something like that in between. But I will try to avoid going into the store more than every other week, because the more you go to the store, the more random items end up in your cart, right? So try to limit your trips to the store and always shop with a list. If you go into the store, have a list, stick to your list the best you can. Which, going back to the empty snacks things, what is it that usually ends up in your cart that you spend a lot of money on and you're at checkout and you're like, how was this so much money? I came for 5 things, I have 17 things, what did I even buy? It was probably empty snacks. It was probably the things that grabbed your attention. Or you didn't shop your kitchen and you were walking around the store like, do I have this? Do we need more of this? Shop your kitchen first and you can avoid that. Speaking of things going bad and having to run to the grocery store in between meal plans and major shopping trips, to avoid things going bad, you should order your meal plan. All right, I'm gonna address the anti-meal plan people now. If you think you don't meal plan, but you eat dinner, you eat meals, you do meal plan, you just might have a bad meal plan. Like your meal plan may be winging it every day and maybe running to the grocery store multiple times a week or deciding whatever fits your fancy that day you're gonna make for dinner, things like that. That's not a good way to save money. You need to meal plan to save money, but you do not have to have a super strict meal plan. I'll link another video here where I talk about meal planning myths and why meal planning really is so important. But you do not have to decide, Monday we're gonna have this, Tuesday we're gonna have this, Wednesday we're gonna have this. You don't have to do your meal plan that way. What you can do is make a list of meal options and then just choose whatever fits your fancy that day, with a few caveats that I'm gonna talk about in a minute, a few things to keep in mind. If you have this flexible meal plan, that's what I'm gonna call it. Flexible meal planning, right? So with flexible meal planning though, to avoid waste, you should just make sure you cook the things with the fresh ingredients that are gonna spoil quickly first. So I make a mushroom stroganoff, one of my meatless meals that is on my go-to dinners list, a mushroom stroganoff. And mushrooms go bad so quickly, like mushrooms, bell peppers, cucumbers, things like that go bad really quickly. So I always make sure I cook those things earlier in the week, pretty soon after I go grocery shopping. Doesn't have to be on a set day, I just know. So I have a paper meal plan, I'm a pen and paper person. And I'll put a star next to the recipes with fresh ingredients that I need to use up first. And then when I'm deciding what we're gonna have for dinner that night or the night before, what we're gonna have the next day, I make sure I'm using those things first. And sometimes it may be like, I don't really wanna cook that tomorrow, but that's about to go bad, so I'm gonna have to cook it. Sometimes it can't be that flexible, but again, the goal is saving money. An easy way to avoid wasting things, to avoid having those fresh ingredients go bad, is to not have fresh ingredients. Canned and frozen items are your friend. So not only do I use a lot of frozen meats, like I buy them in bulk and I freeze them like I was saying, but I use a ton of frozen vegetables. I'm gonna have a whole video soon about how I cook frozen veggies and make them taste delicious and not boring and mushy and bland. We don't do bland anything in this house, okay? We make big, flavored, tasty things. I roast frozen vegetables almost every night for dinner. One of my tips is to keep sides simple. So rice in the rice cooker, roasted veggies, and like a stir fry with that pre-chopped chicken is a super easy, really minimal effort and energy cooking meal. You put minimal effort and energy into the cooking of that meal is what I'm trying to say. But that also is all things that won't spoil. Rice is in my pantry, chicken and broccoli are in my freezer. They're not gonna go bad. If something happens and I don't cook that meal on the day I think I'm gonna cook it, nothing's going to go bad. Canned and frozen veggies and other ingredients are your friend. So you can plan to use those fresh things that are gonna go bad first, and then you have these frozen and canned items that can hang around for forever. Another way to use up what you've already bought to buy less is to double recipes. So maybe you double it and you eat it the next night also. Maybe you double it and you freeze part of it. Maybe it's one of those recipes where you can freeze it before you cook it. You just like assemble it in one of those like metal baking pan things. I actually have never done this. That's just not my style, but it could work. But you double it, throw it in the freezer, or you have it in the fridge for the next night. Maybe the next night is like a really busy night. Your kids are in different activities. It's a leftover night. But doubling recipes helps you use up the things you already bought. Again, if you're already buying these things, try to find more ways to use it because you're already spending the money. My last tip in the buy less category is to buy things in bulk, but not those empty snacks. So don't be going to Sam's Club and Costco and buying giant containers of potato chips. I'm just picking on potato chips today. But that is not actually saving you money because again, that's empty calories, empty snacks. You're not getting filled up. Your belly's not gonna be not hungry after eating that. It might be for a few minutes, but not for a long term, right? So buy in bulk what I call basics, your pantry staples. So your rice, your canned goods, even things like flour if you do a lot of baking. Why did I not say this before? Oh, and I completely forgot one of my own tips. We'll come back to that in a second. But buy those ingredients in bulk, and that's gonna save you money because you're making things from scratch and you're getting the from scratch ingredients for super cheap. Sure, you can buy a few snacks in bulk, but maybe hide them from your children and keep them as like backup when your snack of the week that you chose is all gone and eaten by the ravenous wolves that are your family, right? So the tip I totally forgot is about making DIY snacks. I mean, I kind of touched on it, like guac and things you can make homemade. Find some recipes that are easy and simple and make your own homemade snacks. I make a lot of muffins. My toddler loves muffins. I have a mini muffin tin, so I don't buy, what is that even called? The little mini muffins that kids love that are loaded with sugar. I make my homemade muffins and I keep half of them out for a few days and I throw the rest in the freezer. You can freeze baked goods and then it's ready to go when you need a snack. And it's again, a filling snack. And it's super cheap because I made it homemade. Okay, the last category of ways to save is to actually stick to your meal plans and use up the things you did buy. So you're doing that already by shopping your kitchen and those other tips I talked about. This is more of how to stick to your meal plan. So this isn't necessarily the ways you save money on groceries, but this is how you ditch the drive-thru, which be sure to subscribe if that sounds like something you are interested in because I have a whole video coming up called How to Ditch the Drive-Thru, like how to eat at home more often. Because not only are grocery prices crazy, but food prices at restaurants and even just regular drive-thrus are crazy. So these are the tips to help you want to cook dinner at home to make you more motivated and not like, ugh, I have to cook after my long day at work and running the kids around or chasing after the kids, whatever. This is gonna help you actually cook dinner at home. So my first one is probably the most important one. It's have backup meals on hand. So again, I have a whole video about my favorite emergency dinners, but things like frozen pizza, even things like bowls of cereal, depending on your family, right? But having those backup meals on hand helps you eat at home, cook at home. So I say I cook dinner 7 nights a week, and I have a video about that too, the tips that help me cook dinner 7 nights a week. But I cook 7 nights a week. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I really do make 7 meals from scratch, 7 days in a row. I have a product with all my tips that help me get dinner on the table 7 nights in a row. That's called the Dinner GPS, which is all these guidelines kind of rolled into this method that helps me get dinner on the table that often. However, whatever your goal is for eating at home, those methods will help you. But anywho, find more information about that in the description. But backup meals are one of those rules that I follow. I always have backup meals in my house. They help me avoid the Chick-fil-A drive-thru when those nuggets are calling me, right? Like, I just don't want to cook. It would be simpler to just pick something up. But it's actually even simpler to throw frozen pizza in the oven. Even simpler than waiting in the Chick-fil-A drive-thru line, right? Along the lines of that, I say you should plan for nights out. If there is a really busy night, multiple things going on, you know that once a week you're just like, it's not gonna happen. Either plan something like a crock-pot meal, that doubled freezer meal you made, or plan a night out. You know, give yourself that grace, but plan those things. You can plan to go on like a kids eat free night, somewhere where they have like Taco Tuesday and it's discounted, right? Plan for those things and you can spend less on your nights out when you think about it ahead of time. And then also along those lines, when you're planning the meals you're gonna cook, which again, you do need a meal plan something, what am I trying to say? Look at your calendar when making a meal plan. That's what I'm trying to say. Again, take into account those busy nights and make a plan for it. Maybe it's a sandwich night. Okay, that totally counts as eating at home. Maybe it's a TV dinner night. Like, people don't talk about those, but TV dinners are still a thing. There's a huge aisle of them at the grocery store. Every once in a while, like, that's what dinner is? Okay. Again, frozen pizza. Whatever your backup dinner is, plan for those nights, make a super simple meal, have a double meal, something like that. Have a plan for those really busy nights, or even plan a night out. I also always make sure I have a super simple meal planned each week so that I can, if something comes up, if something happens, not only do I have a backup frozen meal, like frozen pizza, again, how many times can I say frozen pizza in one video? But I have a backup meal, or I can just swap in this super simple meal. So say I plan on cooking something that requires a little bit more hands-on time, and then there's a huge accident and it takes me 30 more minutes to get home. and I cannot make that homemade meal in time to get the toddler to bed, right? Instead, I'm gonna make that super simple dinner, and it works. I'm still eating dinner at home. I have multiple backup plans, essentially. But the number one way I cook dinner at home 7 nights a week is I just keep it simple. Keep your meal plan, your plan for dinner, if you don't want to call it a meal plan, if you're anti-meal planning, just keep it simple. You don't need to make elaborate meals. That's going to keep things cheaper and easier and help you eat at home. So like I said, I have basic things where I throw chicken, my simple side dishes that I stick to. I throw it all together. I get dinner on the table super quickly and easily. I also make the same recipes over and over again. My go-to dinner list is like 50 recipes, and yours may not start out that much. But the more you cook the same recipes, the more you can like cook it in your sleep, right? So even if you aren't a huge fan of cooking, find some recipes that you can make over and over again. Implement whichever of these tips work best for you, and I guarantee you're gonna save money, time, and sanity. That's what my channel is about, is saving you time, money, and sanity when it comes to feeding your family. All right, so what are my top 5 tips? What do I think are not only the most impactful to save you money, but are the most realistic? Number 1 is those backup dinners, those emergency dinners. Keep those on hand. You are going to be so happy you did. Always keep something on hand. There have been a few times where I realized that we used up our backup dinners and I didn't buy more, and then I don't want to cook dinner, and I'm like, no! I don't want to go spend a ton of money on takeout, nor do I want to cook it. I don't have anything else to do. And I'm mad at myself for not following my own rule. So the backup dinner is definitely my number 1 tip. But one of the biggest impacts to your grocery budget is actually skipping those empty snacks. Like, there's a lot of things you can do to make your dinners cheap, to buy cheaper ingredients, to have cheaper recipes, but those empty snacks are what really kills your grocery budget. So focusing on those, maybe before you even try and cook at home more, focusing on those empty snacks and avoiding them and having more protein heavy, more filling, fiber, whatever, all those things. Ditching the empty snacks is one of the best ways to save money. And then avoiding food waste. You gotta use things before they go bad, or else you're literally throwing away money. So ordering those meal plans, making sure you are cooking those recipes with the fresh ingredients first, utilizing canned and frozen ingredients, making sure you meal plan several meals with canned and frozen things, shelf-stable things, things that last a long time, whatever. Making sure you avoid food waste is definitely gonna save you money because you're not literally throwing away money. And then of course, shopping your kitchen first, utilizing what you already have so you buy fewer things. And then last but not least, oh yes, the mini prep method. So saving yourself some time, avoiding those convenience ingredients by doing a mini prep where you prep components of dinner. You prep a sauce, you prep the veggies, you throw it in the freezer, whatever works for you. But saving money by avoiding convenience ingredients, and then saving time when it comes to the time you were standing in the kitchen to cook the meal by having these things half prepped already. You're gonna thank yourself for that also. You're gonna thank yourself for doing that, and you're gonna thank yourself for having those backup meals on hand. This was an in-depth video, I think. I hope it was in-depth. I hope you understood everything I said. Leave me a comment if you need clarification on anything. I had notes, but like there was a lot I was going over. Definitely, now that you've come to the end of the video, be sure to check out the other ones I've linked. Grab that free printable in the description below. If you are new to meal planning or you just hate it and you don't want to do it, I sell pre-made meal plans on Etsy. You can also check out more information about the dinner GPS at the link below. And yeah, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for all those upcoming videos I mentioned, and I will see you next time.